Hey, and welcome to this evening's very late men's mental health journal with me, Johnny. Tonight, I've just got a few things done. Came back from tag rugby, and yeah, I was in the pub and I didn't have a alcoholic drink. Well over a month of well, a bit longer than that of not having alcohol, and am I feeling good for it? I'm very proud I've not had it. But it's a very interesting place. Don't get me wrong, I'm tempted for a drink, but at the same time, I know with the emotional work I'm doing right now and where I'm at in my life, that if I have an alcoholic drink, even just one, it could massively put me into a state of strong depression or anxiety, even if I temporarily get that boost. And what would happen is I would just be wanting that high of feeling really good that you get originally when you start drinking alcohol. And it's not to say that I'll never drink alcohol again. Maybe I won't, I don't know. But it's certainly when I'm deep diving into my life right now, it's not the time. But then at the same time, I'm a bit like I miss elements of it being of my social life because it was a strong part of my social life. I enjoyed playing football and then going for a pint with the guys or social groups or whatever. So it's not to say when I've done all this emotional work that I can have a couple of pints and stick to that. But I know right now that I just be come to a massive low because I'm still working for a lot of things. But yeah, like we're in the pub and this guy comes and sits next to us, and he must have been he is beyond 60, I would say. And yeah, he was absolutely hammered, right? And he was on his own and he was drinking, and he said through his life he's just been, you know, and there's no judgment, but he had been taking drugs, he'd been drinking, and he wasn't. I don't think he was on the streets. He said he was from like a local town, Clevedon, which is just outside Bristol, where I'm based. And yeah, he was talking about the posh areas and things like that of where he is, and he just wanted a pint, so he came in. And yeah, you could tell he was the poor man. And again, it's no judgment, but a lot of people do this. I know, and I've been there so many times. And he was just drowning in sorrows, and it because you could tell there's a lot of pain in him. I can tell energetically these things, and I see people and like using alcohol so much to just push through the pain, and I totally get it. Why you would do that? Because sometimes the emotions are just. I feel like I could get quite emotional in this video today. I didn't even think I would. Just sometimes your emotions can be so strong and so unbearable, or you feel like they're unbearable. And the quickest way out of it is alcohol. And I can understand why people get caught in alcoholism. Like, I've been in some quite dark places, whereby, like, in my 20s, I'd never have a drink more. I guess the theme today is alcohol. Again, deciding on it. But when I was in my 20s, I'd drink at weekends pretty much every weekend, but I wouldn't like go on any like multiple day or even two days. Maybe I'd be out on the Friday and Saturday, or if it was bank holiday, Saturday and Sunday. But I'd rarely go on like a continuous session of just constantly drinking every night. But in 2022, I lost a job and I got into times where I was drinking in an evening, and random evenings. And I just felt like I wanted to bury the pain. And then I found a new job and I did quite well with it. And I've done very well in that career path since, really, really progressed. But I've had some down moments in 2023. And then 2024, not all the time, but there was spells in both of those years where I went into some quite dark places with my drinking. In that I found myself drinking around like lunchtime because I was hungover from the night before, and maybe it was a light day or whatever work wise, and I just wanted to drink, and it was, yeah, it came from a lot of hurt in my dating life at the time. And then this year, when I look at what I've done this year, I'm actually really proud. Now, I did have there's probably two moments where it went downhill a little bit, but even then I stopped it. I had one very heavy night out, and I was like, yeah, after I felt rubbish for days. I didn't continue drinking though, I just felt rubbish for days, physically and mentally, and just like, no, I'm not drinking for a while. And then there was probably a time about just over a month ago. So basically, the start of April, I made this like decision that after our end of season do, after a couple of nights, sort of like drinking, but it wasn't too heavy, it wasn't over the top, so I wouldn't class that as one. But I just felt rubbish, and I thought, I'm going to give this up. I'm going to be very real with this. And then, like that Friday, I had a date with the most incredible woman, I thought at the time, and she'd been. I won't get into her stories, but she was sober. She didn't drink, and I turned up 100% sober and just didn't drink because the Sunday, and I'd already made the decision not to drink for a while or forever. Well, I thought forever at that point, and we bonded. We were really close, and it was beautiful. And I thought, if this is a sign for me to be continuous sobriety, I don't know what is. It was beautiful, like just me being fully me, full energy, not needing alcohol. And then we were very close. You know, she was sending me all these cute messages and saying really enjoyed it, pictures of us together, and wanting another date. And of course, I really wanted to go on one, so I arranged it. And we had the most amazing second date, a couple of, just after that. And yeah, then there was really strong connection between then, just after then. And then suddenly out of nowhere, it was, I'm not sure I'm feeling any romantic connection. I've talked about this before, but this is more the alcohol thing, but the first thing I wanted to do out of like nowhere, after all the signs were so good, and it just really hurt me, and it triggered off a lot of other things that I realized I needed to look at, maybe in my shadows. And also this big turning point of not drinking and meeting someone you really connect with on a deep level, I felt. Obviously it's not the case, and there's always a bend in the river taking me somewhere else, but it was, the first thing I wanted to do when I got a message from her saying, didn't feel like a romantic connection. We suggested having a call, and we did that. And it was a pretty good ending call, so that was good. But when she told me that, all I wanted to do was I walked straight to the shop, and I wanted to buy the biggest bottle of vodka or rum, probably rum. I preferred rum. And I walked into the shop, and I just started like bursting into tears, knowing it's the wrong thing to do, and just walked out. And then called my family, and I'd lost it. I just, like, all these things were coming out. I was utterly, I'm going to say, I was a bit heartbroken, even though it was a very short-term thing. Because I felt I was onto something, actually met someone and really onto something special, and suddenly it to change over the course of a few days, from talking about wanting future dates, to pictures of you and all this kind of thing, to saying she wasn't interested, that really, it brought up my abandonment wounds. And that's me, but it's also, I found it quite hurtful. And I explained that and my feelings, and that's all I could do at the end of the day. And, that's where it was. But the alcohol, just those wounds wanted to be soothed by alcohol in that moment. And I didn't. And I'm going to be like honest what happened. So I really worked through the emotions. I screamed into pillows. I was angry. Just all these things that are coming up for me. I didn't obviously spoke to her since, block connection, because we both agreed I suggested it and she was okay with it. Just not contact anymore because it kind of run its course. And yeah, I just kind of processed my feelings, saw my family for a bit, did my brief sort of social things without alcohol for about a week, and spoke to some people. They offered to speak to me, and a week later, just over a week later, I come back to my city after visiting the family, and I then was kind of like, though I set myself limits to my accountability partner, so I've got that external accountability and tell him like what I'm going to give him like 200 quid if I mess up any of these, so I'll never mess anything up, like of what I'm not going to do. And that includes reaching out to people or going on social media and certain like limits and things like that. So I've been very, very strong with that. And yeah, I'd kind of like run out of the week's targets and finish the week. And I spoke to a friend, and unfortunately this friend, a beautiful human being, really meant well, but had trouble of their own that they were processing. And they asked me some questions that really upset me. Now I'm okay to being challenged and deep, but these questions really upset me and started making me think there was something wrong with me. And again, that's my own stuff, and I'm being honest with that. But as a result, I decided to have a few rums and cokes in the small cans, like the 5% stuff. And I started feeling a bit more relaxed. And before I knew it, I was getting another bottle of rum and coke. And I went on a spell of drinking for a couple of days. And wow, it was just so dark. This is just over a month ago, and I'm just, I'm taking on my journey with me. And I got out of that, and I remember just walking to my kitchen in the morning, and I just felt horrible, and I had to go to work, all these kind of things. And I'm just like looking at this bottle, and I'm like, do I keep drinking to ease the pain, or do I pour it down and face this pain? And I chose to face the pain and poured it down the sink. Strangely enough, I didn't mention as well, the day before this woman mentioned the connection, she didn't feel the connection. I actually got my raffle prizes from weeks ago from football, and it was a bottle of vodka and a bottle of rum, large, and I poured both of them down the sink at that time. And then I thought, wow, I'm making me change. I'm really gonna, do my best to make it work with this woman. Even though like I can only be me, which I had been to that point, and then obviously I got that blow. So anyway, coming back to where I was in the storyline. I poured it down the sink, and I haven't drunk since. And I've been in moments where it's been really, really hard. Really hard to sit in my feelings, but I've also been in moments of absolute bliss. I think I spoke about this yesterday or the day before, but I feel like I'm going through a bit of an ego death, which I've been finding. It's weird when you hear something and someone else mentions it. It's a sign. Like I was listening to Eckhart Tolle. I've got his course and just finishing it. Very short and sweet, very insightful. One of the like the calmest spiritual teachers out there. And then Danny Morel, who I'm learning a lot from, is also talking about ego deaths. And an ego death, like I touched on, is when like the ego, like the need for recognition from external things, starts to really reduce. But as a result, there's a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of sadness from that ego part of you dying out. Not the whole ego, but parts of it. But then there's times when you can get to absolute bliss that you're not needing anything for anyone. You can just feel calm and peaceful in yourself. And I find when I'm in those states, things start showing up anyway. And how beautiful a place would it be to live in that the majority of the time, that you're not reliant on external things, because anything can happen in the external world. But most of us are driven by what happens like around us and for our mood rather than it coming internally. And that's what I'm working on. But yeah, where did that come from alcohol? Yeah, I feel like, I feel like I kind of been going on a bit of an ego death because I've actually been real with myself. I've got promotions, I've made a bit of money over the years, but I've really maxed out my investments to heal myself. And there's a part of me that's like, do I want to invest in myself and do all that again? And I'm always a big fan of investing in yourself. And I push through the discomfort of all the things I've invested in, even like a diamond ticket to spend a dinner with Danny. And yeah, like right now, I'd love to watch this video in a year's time. I'm going to watch this video in a year's time because I know the version of me watching this in a year's time will be like in absolute love and appreciation for what I'm doing right now. You just got to have that faith that things will work out, even when you feel like, even when you feel at times like you're never going to meet the love of your life, you're always going to be alone, and that you're not going to hit that financial freedom. You're going to be stuck in the cycle. Of course, I feel all of those things, but you've got to have faith that just doing the uncomfortable things and sitting with myself and really going deep is really, I've got to be really courageous and love myself for that. You know, doing my social things, you know, like tag rugby I did tonight, or I would typically do football tomorrow night, but I've got a couple of things come up, calls. Yeah, doing the work is just so important. I'm not feeling my saddest right now as I record this. I shouldn't say that. I've got to be very cautious of my language. I'm feeling quite neutral. Feeling quite neutral. Yeah. Again, I may or may not go back to alcohol, but I certainly won't right now because I know the path and the darkness it takes me to. But yeah, I guess I'm checking in with how well I'm doing for myself, even when it's tough. Thank you for listening.